Welcome to On the Point Podcast, a podcast for all things Overwatch with a heavy focus on League. We're back, guys. Welcome to our official first episode.
Yeah, for real now. This ain't the 0 episode. We're actually going to talk about things.
Well, I'm assuming that you know who we are, but just in case, I'm Katie.
And I'm CJ.
Yep, I'm the casual, he's the expert, and we are going to get right into this because, holy cow, you guys, we have had the red wedding of Overwatch League roster cuts.
Oh my god, yeah. It was one of those things where as soon as, the window opened and nothing happened for such a long time, I was just like, oh, we're going to have a bloodbath right at the end. And sure enough, we're 2 days out from the end of the trading window, and we've seen some teams completely gut their rosters.
Oh, yeah, and the first one, I'm going a little bit out of order from the outline, which, sorry, but the first one that crossed my feed was actually San Francisco Shock. And I don't know if they were the first ones to do it or just the first ones that I knew about, because I've got a friend who's a Shock fan. And so it's, they cut these three humans and she was mourning the loss. I'm like, but they don't play very often, do they? It's not like they cut, Sleepy or anyone.
Yeah, the thing is, I kind of look at this as like a trimming the fat kind of move, because Nomi, I feel really bad for all three of these guys. I'm going to say that up front, because even though Nomi and Doc were part of the lineup where Shock was playing in the first half of the season and they were not doing super well, they never really seemed... These guys are good, and Nomi especially never seemed like he was giving the team any issues on the field. But the thing is, he's just been outperformed by Super, and Super has had more time to play and scrim with the current lineup, and he's kind of established a place in this team, and I just don't really think that there is one for Nomi anymore. IDDQD has a similar thing where his spots are kind of covered by the other DPS players that the Shock has, because the Shock has a wealth of really good DPS players.
Honestly,
Meanwhile,
I think that's a pattern that we're going to be seeing a lot in a lot of these roster cuts, is that, well, this person's actually a really skilled player, but there's someone else on the team who does the thing better than they do, or are better established, or work better within the framework. I can talk words. Better within the framework that the team has already set up. So none of this is saying, these people are terrible, we don't want them. It's a whole lot of, you're good, I promise, but we already have Bob, Joe, and Fred over here who are better for what we're doing.
Oh yeah, and none of these players are in any way bad. Like IDDQD, he got to play for 5 minutes out of the entire season, and I think he deserves way more playing time, but the Shock knows kind of what they want.
Yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these players that have been dropped, just in general, not necessarily from the Shock, but from all of these different teams, get picked up very quickly from the 8 teams that have now been confirmed to be new teams for this upcoming Overwatch League season.
Yeah, because we're going to need 80 new players to come in for the expansion teams and refilling the rosters that are now under strength, because I think you need to have 8 minimum. So
I mean, Mayhem did for a long time. Mayhem only had 6 for most of the first season.
Yeah, but I think you need to have 8 people signed for this season, or I remember reading that somewhere, and I might be wrong.
Is that a new rule implemented for season 2?
I think so.
You think they looked at Mayhem and went, seriously, guys, you need to have someone to rotate out?
Yeah, and honestly, I think it's just a good idea anyway, in case someone gets sick or is having a bit of a cold streak and you need someone to slot in, or just to have more flexibility, because that was one of the things in the early stages where people were like, oh, Mayhem doesn't have to work to integrate new players into the existing chemistry they had as Mayhem, as Misfits, the team that they played as in Contenders and then came into the Overwatch League as an entire roster. But at the same time, you have these teams that have more flexibility than you, and also they've seen what you bring to the table. They know what your team can do, and it's much easier to prepare for one roster than, say, look at Philadelphia Fusion and the way they kind of did stage 1 and 2, where depending on what they were doing, they could swap in either EQO or Shadowburn, depending on what kind of style they wanted to play.
Yeah, so and it just helps to have someone. Wow, I completely lost that sentence. Do 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 do. Yeah, Mayhem really needs more people because they need people to take a break. And then
Well, they
Mayhem, I think,
also
also released someone, didn't they?
they released 6 people. Their roster went from 9 down to 3, and the people that they released are Swoosh, Zebasai, Zupe, Logix, Maniton, and Zappis.
I was surprised by this amount of releases from Florida, who never had that many people to begin with. I mean, in terms of
I
percentage of team released, I think the
mhm.
only one that rivals them in percentage is the Shanghai Dragons.
Yeah.
And we'll
Well,
talk about them soon enough. That's when the Red
we
Wedding joke
absolutely,
started.
yeah, we will absolutely get to that. But with Mayhem, I saw a lot of this coming, to be honest with you, because with them finishing second to last in the league
Yeah.
and never really seeming to click as a team the way that Misfits had before the Overwatch League, and even with the new coach and new players, they just never quite seemed to come together. I understand the decision to sort of cut down the roster to a few core people that you want to rebuild around. I was kind of surprised to see Logix go, though.
Yeah. I
Just
thought Logix was a
because,
pretty solid player, but I also thought
yeah,
Swoosh was as well, so.
I like Swoosh, but I definitely think he's not a top tier main tank. I think that he's a good player, and there's definitely a place for him in Overwatch League or on the contender scene. But if I was the Mayhem GM and I was trying to rebuild this team, Awesome Guy is probably a better pick. And just, I don't see Swoosh being able to hang with the top tier, like OG on the Dallas Fuel, who I think is really underrated.
Fissure.
Fisher now on Soul and Gesture. I don't see him being able to hang with those guys on the main tank role.
Do you think he'd be a better off tank?
I don't know because I've never seen him play off tank. He actually used to be a DPS player.
Huh.
He played Genji for a while on I think it was Movistar Riders. It might have been E United. My memory is a little foggy because I haven't thought about it in a while.
I don't
But
even know these names, so you got one up on me there.
but yeah, he played Genji and he was maybe a little over aggressive as a Genji, and Winston kind of suited that because instead of 200 HP, now you've got 5.
I mean,
But
who isn't over aggressive on a Genji? Let's be real.
yeah,
That's
true.
kind of what Genji mains are known for. That and needing healing. Um, I love you, Genji
Yeah,
mains. I really do.
but yeah, he never really, like, I don't think he ever set the world on fire with his main tank play, and I think it was kind of a weakness for this team. And I hate saying that anyone is a weakness to any team because all of these people seem genuinely super nice, and all of the Overwatch League people that I have met are super nice, but just talking from a pure analytical standpoint here.
I mean, you can be a great player and a poor fit, and I think this is the point
Hmm.
where we mention kind of the elephant in the room. We say as the Canada versus Brazil match is on at the time that we're recording this, XQC,
Hmm.
who is a very, very solid main tank and a difficult person to work with on a team.
I am refraining from comment because I don't want to be spammed into oblivion by XQC's fan base.
I mean,
Uh,
I don't,
I
for XQC,
I'm
you
going to be
know,
diplomatic here.
well, we can be diplomatic and still have opinions. That's part of the point of a
Yeah.
podcast, honestly.
Hmm.
XQC, neither of us are terribly fond of him, I think, as a person. We can both recognize that he is a very skilled main tank. We can also both recognize that he was not a great fit for Dallas Fuel, and I would say for the league in general, because they
Yeah.
require a certain amount of decorum. And as a professional league streaming on ESPN, Disney X, especially Disney XD,
Mm-hmm.
like you have a contract to stream on Disney, you want people on
Mm-hmm.
their best behavior, which
Yeah.
is why the Ryu Jaehong Carpe thing was hysterical. And also one of those moments of, hey, maybe don't say you're gonna kill him. We sure are streaming on Disney. Like it was, it.
Mm-hmm.
God bless the All Stars match. That was so much fun. But
The All Star match was fun as all hell.
oh yeah,
Um,
but but
but I
hiring,
do want to throw XQC a bone.
yeah,
And say that the dude works really, really hard, and I think that was part of the problem in him fitting into the Overwatch League, at least initially. And I know that that sounds really weird, but he was trying very hard to be a full-time streamer and a full-time Overwatch League pro.
and you
And
can't
that's
do both.
yeah, that's a ridiculously hard balance to strike. Even if you had every other aspect of everything perfectly in order, there is so much to do on that front, you know?
And that is why Siegel retired from the league, is he wanted to focus on full-time streaming, and that's a
Mm-hmm.
legitimate strategy.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and he's definitely, I think, a little happier doing that, or at least he sounds to be. And I gotta respect the that desire, because he said on stream that the reason he wanted to go back to it is he felt like he was kind of taking the stream and the people who got him the level of popularity that he could get up on that stage. He felt like he was taking them a little bit for granted, and he wanted to focus on them and what he was doing and just have fun with it, you know?
Makes sense.
Yeah, and I like that. I guess we're talking about.
Yeah,
I do want to finish up on Mayhem real quick before we hop over to
to
Dallas
Dallas.
fully.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we transitioned there a little bit. Zupe and Zebasai drew a lot of criticism over the course of the season. Their ult usage and positioning was kind of questionable, and it cost the team in a bunch of different fights. So I understand them getting cut.
Correct me if I'm
Uh,
wrong. Zipe and Zebasai were the support line.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Zupe tended to play the Zenyatta, where Zebasai was Mercy Lucio.
Okay. And yeah, your
Yeah.
support line going down is a really good way for the rest of the team to go down. And I say that
Mm-hmm.
as someone who has been solo support and been solo ulted more than once. Thanks, Junkrat. Uh, yeah.
Yeah, the team never seemed to rate Zappis like super highly, and his performance when he got to play for Mayhem hasn't looked at the same level that it did when he was playing with Team Gigante before Overwatch League, and then and also in Contenders. Or no, he didn't really play with him in Contenders. Blah. Well, at least not Contenders after the league started. I'm qualifying my statements all over the friggin' place. But yeah, didn't quite look like he did with Team Gigante or Team Finland, which kind of the same thing.
So he's another person who would be a better fit on a different team.
Yeah, I think he'd be a better fit on a different team. He's a really good off tank, and he's also like when Gigante won Contenders season 1, he was, I think, the shot caller for the team at that point. He was the strategist for them. And I think he's a good in-game leader type. I wasn't surprised to see him go, though. They just didn't really seem to do much with him. Maniton and Logix were a little more surprising to me, because Maniton seemed consistently very solid for the team, but I don't think he developed synergy with Awesome Guy the way that he wanted to. Like, they never quite seemed in sync. So I guess that's kind of why he's going. At the same time, Logix has a lot of overlap with Saya players' hero pool. Like, they're both known for Tracer and Widow, but whereas Saya's the stronger Tracer, or the stronger Widow, Logix is the stronger Tracer. So I guess they kind of figured that Saya's Widow is better and his Tracer is good enough that they don't really need Logix, and they'll get him out of the way to pick up someone later to fill in whatever holes there are between Saya player and, like, the Omniflex player, Tvik.
Okay.
Because right now the roster's just Awesome Guy, Saya player, and Tvik.
And we've got to recruit, I want to say, at least 5 other people to build around that,
Yeah.
given current league
Yep.
rules.
Mm-hmm.
That it'll be interesting to see where Florida goes from here. I'd also heard a
Yeah,
rumor
and
at
they
one point that they were rebranding and changing their colors, but I have seen that supplanted absolutely nowhere, so I'm taking that with an entire shaker of salt.
and I will say I've also I don't know exactly what their plan is to rebuild because obviously I'm not privy to these things, but I know that their GM or someone high up in their organization said that they're not just coming in with a full Korean roster.
Okay. Well,
So we'll see what they start to do after the expansion team free agent signing period is done.
so for that period, do we think there's going to be a whole lot on the front end? Like, it goes live on, I want to say, the 9th. Do we think we're going to
Yeah, the
get a
ninth.
whole lot of announcements that week? Or do we think that they're going to be spread out or a little more back heavy in the same way that the cuts were?
I have no idea because some of these teams have only been announced fairly recently, whereas others have been rumored or announced for a long time.
And they were only
So I
just
don't.
confirmed this morning. Like, at the time
Yes.
of this recording, the official tweet from Overwatch League confirming all 8 cities was this morning.
Yeah. So I don't know how far along these new teams are in preparing and scouting and building their rosters. I imagine they've got to be getting close to ready. I just I have no idea what they have in store, what they've got in mind.
Well, it'll definitely be interesting to see.
Yeah, I've got a lot of people I'd like to see them pick up, but
Well,
I
yeah.
can't say when that's going to happen. Which team do we want to talk about next?
Well, we were
Go over to
talking about
the.
the fuel, so I feel like
Yeah,
we should stick with that.
yeah. And after Seagull's retirement, we've only really got two roster changes from the Fuel. Coco is going over to coach, and Chips Hyen is just released, which this makes me very sad because they were part of like the OG Envy squad.
I feel kind
That
of bad for Chips. Like, they could never pronounce his name, and now he's gone.
oh my god, every time Semler was casting a Dallas Fuel game, Chips Ayan, it's just like that's not his name. The man himself has said that that's not his name.
I mean, at one point, one of them called Brigitte Brittany, I think it was. So I
Yeah.
will give the casters a lot of leeway because it is really, really
Oh
hard
god, it's a
to speak
hard,
off
hard
the cuff,
job.
especially for hours at a time.
Oh,
So,
absolutely. And
yeah.
Semler, I love you. That one thing just drove me insane. But yeah, Chips Hyen and Coco have kind of been supplanted in their roles by Unko and OG.
So it's another
Which,
case of good players, good people, not a good fit for the team anymore.
yeah, kind of. And both of these guys have very high, like, in game IQs. They both have a great strategic mind for the game. I remember hearing somewhere that Coco maybe wasn't the in-game leader that they wanted or something. I don't know, and I'm not gonna like speculate on that, but they're happy with OG's style and contributions to the team are what they're looking for. But Coco and Chips are both very valuable resources for in-game knowledge, and I'm really happy to see Coco go over to the coaching role for that reason. Because
So,
he's a smart guy, he'll be able to help the team figure out strategy and bring a seasoned pro's perspective to that.
so do you think Chips will be picked
Chips,
up by another team, or do you think he'll be picked up in a coaching or administrative capability?
I think if he wanted to coach, that Dallas Fuel might have extended him the same deal. And again, that's speculation. I don't know if they did and he turned it down, or if they didn't at all. I have no idea. But considering they offered it to Coco, I feel like they might have. I think he probably still wants to play if he's interested in continuing with Overwatch. And I think if he performs well in the World Cup, we could see him get picked up by one of the expansion teams. Because, like, Zappis got to really show his stuff in... And we'll talk about this later, but he got to show his stuff in the Incheon qualifier for the World Cup, and I think there's a lot of buzz around him now that there wasn't before.
Well, and I think
Chips didn't really get
Go ahead.
to... Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, Chips didn't really get to play all that much in Overwatch League, and he didn't look super inspiring on the Mercy, and his Zen looked a little shaky, but we don't know how much of that came down to the team not quite being coordinated yet.
Yeah, he played a lot in the first couple stages, which was when Fuel was having a lot of growing pains.
Yeah. And I think that that's kind of damaged his reputation a bit. I think if he gets to go into the World Cup and show out, that there's a very good chance we could see him get picked up by someone, but if he doesn't, I don't know what to tell you. I would really love to see him get picked up, though, because I love Chips. I have used my Prime sub on Chips multiple times on Twitch because he's a really nice guy, really chill, and just, he's damn good at the game.
So much of this, especially for us, because we're not industry insiders, sometimes we just act like it. It's a whole lot of we don't know, and we'd love to be. It's a whole lot of we don't know and a whole lot of wait and see. And there's not really a problem with that, but it does make it a little frustrating for predictions sometimes. Like, yeah, I'd love to see him get picked up. I don't know by whom or where, but I'd love to see it. And I'd be very surprised if a lot of the players who were cut aren't picked up by other teams or by these new teams.
Definitely. And I kind of want to use that to transition into one of the teams that I think we'll see people get picked up from with the cuts that they've made. Let's talk about the Gladiators a little bit. Let's talk about the Gladiators.
Oh, I was so sad when all of these happened. Honestly, the first bit of it where I just kind of went, wait, what the hell is happening? Was
oh no, I remember because we were talking about this and you were really surprised, and I'm like, this makes a lot of sense to me.
Well, the first bit that threw me was Fissure being traded. And part of it's just because I'd had a really rough day that day to begin with, and then getting that news was just like, no, I don't understand anything anymore. What the hell just happened?
Yeah.
So yeah, Fissure's on the Dynasty now. Good times and great oldies.
Yeah, Fissure's on the Dynasty now. So the Gladiators have lost that frontline resource, and on the heels of that, they also cut iRemix.
Which really surprised me, especially given that they'd started him for good reason with the playoffs.
I could have gone either way on keeping him, to be honest. Like, I could have seen either one going. I could have seen them keeping him. I could have seen them letting him go, so I wasn't too surprised by this. Because, like, iRemix has proven himself to be a good tank, and he, showed that he can hang in the playoffs, but you could definitely see that the team was kind of missing something without Fissure.
Yeah.
He proved himself worthy of an OWL spot 100%, but he's not a patch on Fissure.
I don't think anyone is.
Yeah, very true. But the team has this wealth of top-tier off-tanks in Void and Bishu, and I think they're looking for a main tank at that same level who can coordinate with them the same way that Fissure did with Void and Bishu. And I don't want to keep making this comparison, but you kind of have to in this situation. I think what they're going to do is they're going to bring up Panker from Gladiators Legion, which is, for those of you who don't know, the academy team for the Gladiators that plays in Contenders North America. And Panker is a seasoned Overwatch pro. He's been around since the very early days of the game. He played for Kongdu Uncia, I think, in Apex Season 1. I'm pretty sure it was Uncia. It might have been Kongdu Panthera. They moved people around a lot between those teams. And after that, he ended up playing for Toronto Esports for a while, and he's been on Gladiators Legion for a bit. So he's an experienced main tank who has shown himself to be able to compete at the highest level. He's been playing at a high level for a very long time and is one of the best tanks in Contenders NA. And he's also got experience working with a, shall we say, a linguistically diverse roster.
Yeah.
Like, he's played on an English-speaking roster, he's played on a Korean roster. He's not going to have communication issues, or at least not many of them, I don't think.
And ostensibly, he'd have some familiarity with the Gladiators' playstyle, and the Gladiators would have some familiarity with his. So it would be a lot easier for, again, no one's really a patch on Fissure, but he would be a better fit for the whole than iRemix.
Yeah, and if I would be kind of surprised to hear them do something other than bring up Panker, but of course, that's speculation. If they have another idea, I don't know about it.
But they would also want another main tank, would they not?
Yeah.
So you'd want
No, absolutely they want. Maybe, maybe not. I know that the people are cleaning the outside of my building right now.
That's okay. I can't hear them, which means the recording probably can't either.
Really?
Yeah, really.
Thank God, because it sounds like someone's like peeing just right next to my mic where I'm sitting.
Oh, man. Behind the magic, folks.
But yes, a quick, I was gonna say a quick peek behind the curtain, but quick.
Anyway, so we may or may not need a second main tank for the Gladiators, and letting iRemix go is another example of good player, poor fit.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's a similar thing with Silk Thread and Asher. I think it was kind of a redundancy thing, because Asher is a Tracer specialist, or at least he was that for the Gladiators, in a meta where Tracer isn't really as important anymore. And the rest of his hero pool is kind of better played by Surefour, who can also pull a pretty serviceable Tracer. Back when he played for Cloud9, he played Tracer for them a lot. To the point there was actually this famous little flub from Doa when Mendo was playing the Tracer instead of Surefour. He said Mendo on that Surefour instead of Mendo on the Tracer.
And the fans rejoiced. What?
So many fanfic writers started just scribbling furiously, but
yeah. Anyway,
Silk
we
Thread,
love you, fans. You're wonderful human beings.
We do. Silk Thread had a pretty similar skill set, but he also had a Genji. But Hydration is a very, very good Genji, so there wasn't. It was again a similar situation to like, you're good at these roles. These guys are maybe a little bit better and fit what we're doing with the team a little bit more, so we're gonna go that way.
Yeah, Hydration's
so I guess
hard to beat.
Yeah, and with Surefour filling most of the hit scan stuff and Hydration covering projectile, you've got most of your bases covered, and they might look for a third person to fill in whatever holes there are in their hero pool.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, instead of having people with a very similar skill set. Speaking of similar skill sets, do we want to go to the Shanghai Dragons now? Because that was one of my big complaints with the roster to begin with.
You know what? Let's save that one for just a minute, and we'll get back to it after a word from our sponsor. We have a sponsor, guys, and we love them to death.
Mm-hmm.
On the Point is sponsored by Fred's BS, Breads and Spreads by Fred. Fred's BS is an LA local one-man baked goods business that offers unique flavors in small batches. Whether you're looking for homemade jams, brownies, blondies, or brown sugar buddies, the best cookies you've ever had, Fred's BS can provide. All products are made in small batches with fresh ingredients. Nothing is ever frozen. Fred provides a plethora of flavors that can't be found in stores, like the aforementioned brown sugar buddies or his strawberry peach paradise sunset jam. Also, if you're LA local, you can choose pickup instead of delivery and get your goods even sooner. Head to fredsbs.com and use coupon code ONTHEPOINT for 20% off your entire order. That's fredsbs.com, fredsbs.com, and coupon code ONTHEPOINT. Fred's BS. Treat yourself, because you deserve it.
That went much better than the rehearsal.
Well, don't tell them that. On a slightly more personal note, I buy those cookies from Fred all the time, and oh my god, they're amazing.
I'm planning on ordering some today just because I can, and oh, you've been talking them up.
Remember to
I'm
use
really
that coupon
excited.
code.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, guys, highly, highly recommended. I get his
Mm-hmm.
stuff all the time. I just put some of that Paradise Sunset jam on my toast this morning for breakfast, and it's so good. So yeah,
It sounds
do
good.
the thing. It's pretty glorious. So let's talk about the Red Wedding.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do
The
this.
blood of dragons flowed freely on whatever day this was announced.
I mean, metaphor is kind of mixed there because the Red Wedding was Stark's, but still, a
Well,
lot of
yeah.
people gone. Just
I was going for
yikes.
poetry, not cultural reference, but
6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
yeah, fair enough. But yeah, they cut 8 people, altering Roshan, Zushu, Freefeel, Five King, Otto, Damon, and Sky. Holy crap.
And I feel like this was a bigger surprise than Florida because it happened before Florida.
I gotta say I wasn't surprised by this. I saw this coming.
I wasn't
Maybe
surprised
not
that they
the
cut
exact.
people. I was surprised that they only kept three. But again, this happened
I
before Florida, so Florida wasn't
yeah.
as much of a shock.
Yeah. So Shanghai, even without getting into their performance in Overwatch League Season 1, they were built with a lot of redundant parts. Five King and Freefeel, I believe, are both Lucio mains.
Hmm.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I know Five King is because I think he's the one that has the Lucio tattoo.
I mean, you're the expert here, so
I
you're saying
just
correct me if I'm wrong to the wrong person. I just know they're
well,
all on the
yeah,
dragon.
I just remember, and I think it was Five King that in the roster announcement video, it was like Five King, and then big drama shot of his face, and then it cuts to like his right thigh, and there's a Lucio tattoo.
Which is a really awkward place to cut to, regardless, for anyone.
It really is, and
And
I remember on Effect's stream, he was watching the announcement video. It makes that cut to the Lucio tattoo, and he's laughing so hard that he has to like pause the video. He just dies laughing.
oh, and I mean, there's nothing wrong with being a Lucio main, but I think
Absolutely not.
very rarely do you see a full-on Lucio main in League, let alone two of them on the same team.
Well,
More
there
often,
were a few of them. Like Zebasai was mostly known for Lucio, and Joe Meister and Doc. Like
all of
they
whom
were
have
known
been
for their
cut.
Lucio play. And well, the thing is, before going into the Overwatch League, Lucio was way more important. For a very long time, he was pretty much like a must pick in most of your compositions because Speed Boost was such a powerful ability.
Interesting.
And then dive and playing at range kind of diminished his importance a bit.
I was gonna say, when I started following Pro Overwatch, I started for last year's World Cup, actually, and it
Mm-hmm.
was all dive all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that just, all dive all the time. It gets a little repetitive.
It
I was
does.
super grateful for the introduction of Brigitte because she disrupts dive so thoroughly, and it shook
Mm-hmm.
everything up, and it was so much fun to see all the comps that came out of that. But
It
anyway,
was.
so yeah,
Yeah.
I
To Shanghai.
personally was not familiar with very many Lucio mains going in because he
Mm-hmm.
showed up so infrequently in dive comp.
Well, he did up until fairly recently, up until right around the World Cup. Actually, was kind of when the Mercy rework came through, and he kind of got supplanted.
Ah,
Yeah. So, yeah, Shanghai was built with a lot of redundant parts. They never really managed to develop synergy and coordination. Even after they had the more mechanically skilled Korean players come in, with the support line being particularly maligned part of the team. Considering they never won a game and they never really had the team come together outside of individual performances, I was kind of expecting a total ground-up rework, except maybe everyone, maybe keeping and rebuilding around a core. And if you have to do it, Geggery, Fearless, and Dia is a great place to start.
Oh, yeah.
The thing that surprised me was Otto, because Otto was one of the other guys who could really pop off. Like, he and Dia were... Dia, Geggery, and Fearless were, like, the bright spots of this team.
But if you
so
really
seeing him go was kind of a moment of, like, just, what? He's really useful, and he has shown up in a variety of different roles. He's popped off to try and help, carry the team through fights.
I wonder how much name recognition he has with fans. And I
Otto...
hate to say that that's one of the things that would go into it, but Shanghai's never going to get rid of Geggery. She's the reason that a lot of people know they exist and we're in their corner. Because they are the only team that has picked up a woman, and because she's so damn good. So that, and Dia also has a lot of name recognition. I personally am not terribly familiar with Fearless, but that's me personally. So I'm also wondering where Otto lies on that scale. Because if he's got a same or similar skill set to someone that they're keeping, but isn't as easily recognizable.
Honestly, he's got a pretty different hero pool than Dia. Dia's more hit scan. Otto was mostly known coming into the league for his Genji play. And they played him on Tracer a bunch in the league as well. Oh my god.
Then I have no idea.
I'm sorry, there's a parade of ambulances outside of my apartment.
Again, I can't hear them, so I don't know if the recording does either.
Thank God.
People understand.
Yeah, I know. I feel bad about it.
I'm just worry about it. Ambient noise is part of the magic. That's how we do this.
Part of the magic. That's a way of putting it.
So didn't Shanghai cut their coaches as well? Or am I misremembering?
Shanghai did cut most of their coaches. The one that they kept, who is an assistant coach at present, I believe, I'm blanking on his name, and I should have included that in my notes for the episode, but I didn't.
Such as
but he was the coach for a Chinese team called Miraculous Youngster. And following the Chinese scene very briefly, the Chinese scene is one of the areas in my knowledge where I'm not as well versed. But a lot of the tournaments in China have been won by Korean teams coming over and taking the Chinese scene's collective lunch money. Like, the first was a team called WNV Korea, which I think Bedoshin got his start there. Bedoshin from the Spitfire.
RUI? 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 I got Google open, so I'm trying to find the coaches of Miraculous Youngster.
Yeah, I'll look it up real quick, but yeah, he was coach for Miraculous Youngster. I think it was RUI.
That's what Wiki says. Thank goodness for the Overwatch League fan Wikipedia. You guys are wonderful.
Oh, up until recently, it says the head coach of Shanghai Dragons.
Who did they keep?
So I guess he's gone too. Was it Creed? Yeah, or I don't know what the.
Regardless, Shanghai cut just about everyone. And from a management standpoint, I can understand this. You've got a team that has skills but isn't meshing well. You have coaches that aren't able to bridge that gap. Sometimes it's worth working with what you have, and sometimes it's better just to start over. And
I think that's what they're doing.
Yeah, with a 0-36 record, starting over.
0-40.
0-40? Oh.
Yes.
Gracious.
They did not win a single regular season game.
Oof.
And they never made it to the playoffs, so that doesn't factor into this.
Yeah, Shanghai had a difficult season. So I think at this point, they're the ones to watch in terms of who are they picking up and how are they going to mesh.
Yeah, I feel like if they manage to put a good team together, and again, I don't know a tremendous amount of like top tier Overwatch League level Chinese talent. Can you just I want to take a second. Can you just imagine what happens when they if they get a win next season?
Everyone loses their collective minds.
It's gonna be like the liberation of France. You're gonna have people like
Waving flags in the streets.
yeah, people singing the French national anthem for some reason. But
Yeah, no. What I'll be interested to see, and I don't know if they'll do this, but it would be an interesting strategy, is to see them pick up a team wholesale and then
mhm.
integrate Gregory Fearless and Dia into it. And it'll,
Yeah, it could be.
and it'll also be interesting to see who they pick for coaches, because like we saw with Fuel, coaching makes a heck of a difference.
Oh, it makes a massive difference. And on that topic, on the coaching thing, see the segue I'm going here. Just
Why are you telling
Seoul
the
Dynasty.
audience about the magic? Why are you doing that?
I don't know. uh, anyway, I'm gonna hop on the segue and I'm gonna ride it over to the Seoul Dynasty. Because aside from the players that they cut most of their coaches as well. They cut everyone but I think Hokuri.
Huh.
And Hokuri is, I think, the place to start rebuilding because basically the rest of the coaches were people that they picked up going into the season for from a variety of teams. Like Always Uve was the coach for Lunatic High, the team that formed the core of Seoul Dynasty. Hokuri was the coach for a team called GC Busan, who you will also know by a different name, the London Spitfire.
The team.
GC Busan is the first team in Apex history to complete what's called the Royal Road. They come in through Challengers, which is like a mini tournament to earn a spot in the big league tournament Contenders. So they came in, didn't look super inspiring in Challengers, added Hokuri, and then won the whole thing.
Wow.
Yeah, and including two huge wins against Lunatic High, who at the time were considered to be the best team in the world.
So then, why wouldn't London have picked him up to begin with? If they picked up.
Dynasty signed him fairly quickly. I think he was only an assistant coach, though. I think Always Uve was still the head coach of Seoul Dynasty and was kind of calling the shots.
Okay.
But they had. Seoul Dynasty also just had a huge. I think they had like four coaches
That's a
that were
lot.
all like head coaches of teams previously. So I wouldn't be surprised to hear if there was like
Butting
kind
heads.
of conflicting ideas on how the team should run. But I think right now they're cutting down to Hokuri, who and hoping that he can do the same thing for the Dynasty that he did for GC Busan and have them develop their synergy and coordination to the level that we saw from Lunatic High in their glory days.
Well, and I'm wondering
And
if
speaking of
Kokiri
glory
won't
days,
pick up people who are also known and skilled as assistant coaches, because grabbing a bunch of people
mhm,
who are head coaches and then, I hesitate to use the word demoting, but it kind of is,
mhm,
into assistant coaches, it's a different skill set. It's got some Venn diagram
mhm.
overlap, but it's still a different skill set and a different role in the team. And if you have someone who is accustomed to calling the shots, now having to answer to someone with different ideology, different methodology, if you've got that much friction on the coaching side, that's going to shake down onto the team pretty hard.
Yeah, and I think that that's. I wouldn't be surprised to hear what happened, and I kind of think that's at least part of it, but obviously I can't say. And I do think one of the other problems was their struggle to find stability at the main tank position.
I mean, they were doing really well in stage one, and I want to say stage two. They were the team to beat for a while.
Yeah, for stage one, they definitely were impressive. Stage two, you started to see the cracks more, and then three and four.
Eh.
The I do think the main tank thing was kind of where things started to come off the rails for them, though. And I hate to say that because I don't think that Overwatch League fans, or at least the people who just got into Overwatch for the Overwatch League, understand how important Miro is to the evolution of the game.
Yeah, you were telling me a bit about this yesterday, and it was definitely all new information for me. So, yeah, let's hear that story.
Yeah, so essentially, Miro, you've heard, that we stand upon the shoulders of giants. Miro is the giant upon whose shoulders Winston players stand. He was the one who really sort of showcased what Winston can do, because up until that point, Winston was considered to be underpowered to a pretty significant degree and was very, very rarely played during the early days of Overwatch.
And that just seems completely ludicrous to me.
I know, it's crazy, but he was considered to be really underpowered, and it was in fact Miro who, playing Winston at such a high level and showing what the character can do, apparently convinced Jeff that, oh no, Winston doesn't need a buff.
As
but
your local
the thing is,
I can appreciate Winston not being buffed.
So Miro pretty much figured out how to make Winston work. And he was the first, and he was the best, and he was the one that everyone kind of emulated to figure out how to play Winston. And that kind of led to the evolution of Dive and all that. But the thing is, Miro, I don't think, really found a new hill to climb after everyone caught up. Because people develop their own styles. Guys like Fisher and Jester play Winston differently than Miro. And I kind of saw this coming, that Miro was falling off a little bit, or at least not living up to the otherworldly highs that we know that he's capable of in Apex Season 4. Because GC Busan, again, Spitfire, they had him scouted. They had him scouted hard. And they just countered him every time he went in. And part of that comes down to the fact that during the glory days of Seoul Dynasty, Ana had a significantly higher healing output than she does now, and Ryu Jihong is the best Ana in the world. And so Miro could go in and have a pocket from the best support player on their best character. Zen puts out significantly less healing. Ana's not as viable now. So his style, I think, kind of relied a bit on that healing, and when he didn't get it, it started to lose some of its effectiveness. And the other thing is, like I said, he was the guy that people watched and that people copied to learn how to play Winston.
So everyone already had his number, and he never really figured out how to change it.
Yeah, I think that that's kind of what happened. And if he can figure out how to, shift gears and move ahead, I would be, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see him on another team.
But he has to prove that he's capable of doing that.
Yeah, exactly. And he didn't really do it in Apex Season 4, and he didn't really do it in Overwatch League, and that's why Dynasty signed Fisher.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And it's still crazy to see him go. They also released Guido and Wikid, and I think it's just a matter of Bunny and Fleta being Bunny, Fleta, and Munchkin kind of just filling the roles that Seoul needs a little more. Like, Fleta can do the Genji, can do the Widow, can do the Hanzo. Bunny can do Tracer, Munchkin can do Tracer and McCree. Like, they cover a lot of the bases that you will need, and I think... I still think that there's maybe a little bit of weakness in projectile for Seoul, in that I don't recall seeing much like Fleta Junkrat, and as far as pretty solid, but I don't know, I'd like to see someone doing that, but it comes down to the team not really needing 4 or 5 DPS players, because up until these releases, I know they played Guido as a support a bunch, but it's 5 DPS players.
Well, and it's also possible that Seoul might sign someone new in the coming weeks.
Yes, and I would imagine that after the free agent signing period, they might try and pick someone up. I can't say for sure. But they might try and get a new support just to sort of rotate with Toby and Jaehong, because the Gambler retired.
Okay. So yeah, so Seoul is also a whole
Yeah.
lot of we'll see. Just kind of filling in the holes here.
Yeah. Who do we got left? We got New
Outlaws.
York, we got Outlaws, we got Fusion, we got Uprising.
Let's go back up to
Where
the
do we
top
want
and just take it from there.
to? Okay.
So New York.
So NYXL, just the only release as of present, because I don't know what they will do tomorrow, is Janus. Mono and Janus are both top tier tanks. They have both played for teams at the highest level since the very early days of Overwatch. But I think that NYXL, that Mono is a better fit for their style of play than Janus and his more aggressive kind of flanky approach.
Okay.
I don't know if they're cutting down to make room or if they're just happy with Mono and in that position, but that's the way I see it, at least.
And I'll be interested to see if they sign anyone new, if they make any coaching changes, if they make any strategy changes. Because once
Yeah,
Shanghai stopped being the team to beat, they stepped in and had some incredible, incredible seasons right up until series rather, right up until the last half of stage, what was it, stage five? Stage four.
Stage 4 NYXL kind of fell off with the meta change.
And I honestly think that part of why they had the finals in Barclays Center in New York was because it looked like NYXL was going to be one of the finalists. And, it's real easy to sell to the home team. That's why we have so many Gladiators and Valiant fans in the arena all the time. So
Yeah,
I would,
it had to be kind of depressing to be at the NYXL watch party, I think.
yeah.
Like I'm sure everyone had a good time, but I imagine that somewhere in the back of everyone's minds it was just like, oh, yeah.
I have friends who are NYXL fans in New York because, hey, their home team. And they were pretty sad when things shook out the way they did. And I can't blame them. They almost had a chance to see their home team play at home, and then things occurred, and that meta change right before the finals threw a lot of people, I think. Threw the Gladiators, threw the Valiant really hard.
Well, honestly, the Valiant thing, like, I don't know if that was entirely the meta change, but
It was not as good a showing as we'd seen
as
throughout stage four. They've
very
had an
true.
incredible stage four.
They absolutely did.
So yeah, I thought for sure that the
Um,
finals were going to be Valiant and NYXL, and then they really weren't. I was like, oh,
yeah, I
oh,
think that's kind of what everyone thought
yeah.
going into that, just because of how well they had performed. Uh, London was, I don't think anyone really gave them a huge chance in the playoffs going into it, just because they had looked increasingly rocky as the season had rolled on.
I was surprised when they beat the Gladiators for the first time.
They started looking like their old selves, and it
Hmm.
was scary how much of an instant upswing that was.
Yeah,
Uh,
those finals were an upset that I don't think anyone was expecting. And London and
yeah,
Philadelphia, of all matchups, orange all the way.
and yeah, and speaking of Philadelphia, Joe Meister, Dayfly, and Shadowburn out. Shadowburn, I think, was the one that surprised people the most, but I get it. Because EQO may have gotten shut down in the playoffs, but he still kind of performed better than Shadowburn throughout most of the season, and that was something that the Fusion themselves had said at a certain point. Like, the reason they're playing it is just EQO had been doing better in scrims, and I also think EQO's more aggressive style synced a little better with how Fraggy plays main tank.
So, again, another case of solid player, wrong fit.
Yeah, I think so. Um, Meanwhile, Dayfly and Joe Meister, Dayfly didn't get played all that much. Neither, I don't think Joe Meister got played at all in the regular season.
Yeah, that's not a name that I recognize. And usually for most Overwatch League names, it's like, oh yeah, no, I've seen them around. Oh, they did this. Oh, they played this match. Joe Meister. There's someone called Joe Meister?
Joe Meister was part of a team called FaZe Clan, and he got picked up with Shadowburn and Carpe. Like, they were on the same team together, and he came in. But the thing is, Joe Meister is predominantly known for his Lucio play. And in the World Cup, he had been sort of forced to play Mercy a bunch, and it hadn't really looked all that good. And when you're on a team with Neptuno,
who is
the
Neptuno.
Battle Mercy,
yeah,
there's not really going to necessarily be much of a place unless you really need Lucio, which in this meta isn't quite as important.
Yeah, being a Lucio main right when the meta shifts away from heavy Lucio play is not easy.
Yeah. And Dayfly, I think it's the same thing. I think it's just Neptuno and Boombox do what the team needs. So they're keeping them and going with that duo over Joe Fly. Joe Fly. Let's just call them Joe Fly.
The rarest of pairs. Yeah. Do you think that Fusion will be looking to fill either of these holes, or do you think they're just going to run with Neptuno and Boombox and call it a day?
I could see them picking up like a backup.
Just in case.
In case something happens, or in case they like decide they need someone dedicated to a specific character that isn't really in Neptuno or Boombox's wheelhouses. But I don't know. I could see them maybe picking up a third DPS.
I mean, a third support or a flex support would make a lot of sense. Again, just in case something happens to either one of them, you want someone who has Mercy and Zen in their wheelhouse so that they can step in if someone needs a break, is injured, just any number of reasons.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. And I can't say for sure. I don't know what their plan is, what their strategy rebuilding is, because honestly, I think they've got a really solid team, and they just need to keep working on improving. I think they've got a really solid foundation, and this is just kind of like a streamlining measure.
Okay. So moving on to Uprising, are we looking at the same idea?
I think it's partially streamlining and partially trading up. I think Snow and Avast are similar to like Joe Meister and Dayfly. I nearly called them Joe Fly again, collectively.
Just call them Joe Fly.
Yeah, I think it's a similar situation where the like Neko, Aim God, and Kellex just fulfill the team's needs, and Snow and Avast aren't really what the team is looking for and don't really offer something different enough to keep them around. Note and Gamsu's synergy is pretty strong, and I think it kind of... I don't think I'm overstepping by saying it seemed like Uprising's favored combo. And while Kalios kind of had to play main tank for a bit when Gamsu couldn't, we didn't see much of Kalios.
Yeah.
Which is a shame, because Kalios is awesome, and I would be very happy to see, like, the Fuel pick him up, for example.
So we return to the refrain of good player, wrong fit. A lot of that.
Yeah, and I think we've got a similar thing with Mistakes. Because Mistakes is a very good tracer, but he's on a team with Striker.
Who is a really good tracer.
Yes. And I want to say something real quick. Quick aside. On a different podcast that I was a part of a while ago, at the very start of the season, I was kind of incredulous at Striker being picked up. Because I had only seen him on Rocks Orcas, I think. And I wasn't impressed with what I had seen there. I messed up. Good on you, Striker.
mean, not every pick is going to be 100% accurate, and there can always be a measure
good
of,
stuff.
oh, I don't know about that one, or who the heck is this guy?
Yeah.
And then you go in there and you're like, oh, well, okay, let's keep them.
Apparently, he is the machine. But yeah, so Mistakes is kind of outclassed on the Tracer by Striker, and I think the Widow as well. His Widow play never really seemed to measure up to the top tiers. Like, I couldn't really see him hanging with Soon or Surefour or Taimu.
Carpe.
Yes, Carpe. Jesus Christ, Carpe. That angry fish.
I think that's how we all felt during the Widowmaker battle for All-Stars weekend.
He's a scary guy.
He's really good. He's really good. Anyway, so do you think Mistakes will be picked up by another team looking to bolster their Tracer play?
I can definitely see it. I think that this is a case of Striker kind of doing most of what the team needs a little bit better for them. Mistakes is still a very good player. I think that if he's allowed to play the heroes he's known for a little more, you'll see a uptick in performance. But I think for Boston, they're probably going to look for someone who plays projectile characters at a similar level to, like, Striker. Looking for someone who can really bring out a top level,
McCree.
Like...
Oh, not.
Well, he's not projectile.
I mixed up my projectile and hit scan. Yay!
But yeah, I think they'll look for an improved projectile player and maybe a second hit scan who can sort of do the McCree thing as well, or who knows. Honestly, Boston is one of those teams where I can just kind of put my hands up and say, I don't know what they're doing, because I was one of those people who, when they initially announced their roster, I'm like,
I don't know what they're doing.
No, I looked at it and I was like, you kidding me with this? Most of these guys have never performed at this level. Most of these guys have never gone to... I was completely skeptical, and I remember... I forget who it was, but someone had done like a rating thing of Overwatch League rosters. And, they went through like S tier, A tier, like anime rating system.
Yeah.
And then at the very bottom, the Boston Uprising was the sole team in XD tier.
Oh, jeez. Good lord.
And I think that summed up what a lot of people thought at the time. Definitely what I thought at the time. But
and then they came through and completely wrecked Stage 3.
So I don't know what they're thinking, but
they got something. God bless. They've definitely got something going for them.
Yeah, they see things that I don't, and fair play.
So Boston is the sit back and popcorn team, because you can't really predict it. You just got to go with it.
Pretty much. Where I'm just like, all right, I'll just see what you do, because it's gonna be good.
So the last team we have on our list, because I believe we've done everyone else, is the Houston Outlaws.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, yeah, Houston's the last because Valiant and London didn't cut anyone. London did their big cut mid-season.
Yeah.
But Houston has lost 3 players: Mendo Kusai, Clockwork, and Fact Fiction. And I'm going to start with Fact Fiction because Fact Fiction is one of those guys who, like, at the start of the season, I'm like, man, Fact Fiction really deserves to be there. He did really well with FaZe Clan. He did well for the Overwatch World Cup USA team when he was their main tank. But I think Houston Outlaws is ultimately a team built around the core of FNRGFE. And FNRGFE was a contenders team that had come together from the remains of 3 other teams, which is Fnatic, NRG, and Gale Force Esports.
Which is why it has such a crazy name then.
And they also had the best logo ever. It was a dachshund as a corn dog.
That's wonderful.
It was so good.
That's wonderful.
Uh, that logo needs to live on forever. But it's a team that's ultimately built around that FNRGFE core, and Muma has played with that team longer. He is a core component of that team, so he was always going to be the person that they run with over Fact. And I think Fact really deserves to be on one of the expansion teams, and I hope they pick him up.
I mean, I'm sure they will. I actually had the opportunity to interview Fact and Banny a while ago at
Nice.
RTX. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
when I approached
Oh, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
approached one of the team's managers and asked to set up an interview, and they asked me, "Well, what do you want to talk about?" And I went into the introduction of Wrecking Ball and how does he affect the meta, and what were you looking at stage one, and what are your strategies for
Mm-hmm.
stage two for season two? And he just looked at me and went, "Oh, you know what you're talking about?" I'm like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because I guess people have who didn't really know what the Outlaws did or what they were playing for have also approached and asked for interviews at that same convention. So it was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah, no, you know how to talk meta, you know how to talk strategy. You want to talk to Bonnie and you want to talk to Fact. And they were
Yeah.
presented as two players who really, really knew strategies and meta and would be really good for an interview covering that. And they were an absolute delight to talk to. So good.
Yeah.
And that interview
Oh, yeah,
is
no.
available on YouTube. I will link it in the comments of this episode. But yeah, I was so
A.
surprised to see him be cut, and I will be even more surprised if he doesn't get picked up either as a fill main tank for for a team that needs new main tank, or for one of the 8 brand new teams that have been confirmed.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I think, and I think the other two are a slightly different picture, because Clockwork was someone who was actually a Tracer main, which is something that Houston needed for a long time, but I don't know why they didn't play him. And I know Muma expressed similar confusion at some point. But the thing about Clockwork is that he's got a really big esports pedigree. He was a TF2 player, and I think he was considered to be like I'm telling this secondhand because I've never really followed TF2 as a competitive game, but he was considered to be the best scout player in the world.
Wow.
Yeah, no, like far and away. Sorry, I'm stuffed up. But he never really lit the Overwatch world on fire the same way he did with TF2. And he just. I guess they figured that his veteran perspective and knowledge of esports and how to play the game and all that was a better fit for a coaching role than a player role, which I kind of agree with, and I think it's a good move. Mendo Kusai, he's been around for a while. He played for old Cloud9. He used to be a teammate of Surefour's.
Huh.
And Mendo never really seemed super comfortable as a pro. Like, he had some mental health issues that made, playing and traveling and doing all that stuff difficult for him. And it just never seemed to be something that was a good fit for him. So I think he just preferred streaming as well, to be honest with you.
Well, and it's
So
such
I
a
think,
different atmosphere. And
very different atmosphere.
yeah, so again, one of those things where I can't blame him, completely understand, and wish him the
Oh yeah,
best of luck.
definitely. And I am definitely not trying to give him any kind of
Oh no,
grief because I understand that. And I think having him go full time as a streamer for them is a better fit for him in terms of he seems to enjoy it more. And also it lets him kind of take care of himself and do what Mendo needs to do.
and that needs to be a priority, and not even just for him, but for everyone, is take care of yourself. And
Yep.
I think not
100%.
enough emphasis is put on that, just in general.
Agreed. So I think that I think they made some good moves. I will be interested to see how they perform because they said that they're really going to stick to that FNRGFE core. They're not letting anyone else go. It'll be interesting to see who they bring on and what they do to sort of tune up for Season 2.
So you think they'll fill in that secondary main tank hole?
They might, or they might just stick with Muma. Like, there have been rumors that the league format might change to be a little shorter. I don't know if that's true or not. I saw it on some esports reporter said that he had been hearing rumors about it. I forget who, otherwise I'd be a little more specific about it. But if they make it shorter to give players a little more time, because burnout and fatigue were something that a lot of players talked about experiencing.
Oh, yeah.
So if they change it to sort of allow a little more downtime and let people recover more, then, you know, maybe they don't need a second main tank, but it still wouldn't be a bad idea to have, just in case.
Well, what I'm wondering is, because if I'm remembering this correctly, every team played every week. At least one.
Played twice every week.
Yikes. So I'm wondering if, with the addition of 8 more teams, if we're going to have same number of weeks, same number of matches total, but some teams will have a bye week or some teams will only play once. So that way you have seasons of the same or similar length, but there's more weight placed on every match because each team is playing less frequently to make room for the newer teams. And having a bye week also helps with burnout, getting a chance to rest, and not just a bye week between stages where everyone is off, but a bye week for individual teams. Like, yeah, the Valiant's not playing this week, it's their bye week, and instead we have XYZ and Theta. Like, that would be super helpful. And I follow enough pro sports to know that football definitely does that.
Yeah, and I think I wouldn't be surprised to see some sort of change in the format to give players more time and take advantage of the fact that you now have more teams in there to sort of give people the chance to rest and recover, because
40.
You have to remember, you're not just preparing for 2 games in a week. You could be preparing for 2 games on consecutive days with completely different map pools.
Yep.
And that is a lot to get ready for. Like, I know you could say that baseball teams are playing like 162 games in the season, but the thing is, you don't need to completely overhaul your strategy in the same way for a game as you do in Overwatch.
And baseball seasons are much longer.
Yes, you don't...
Yeah. You're not playing every week or twice a week.
If you're playing in City Field specifically, you don't need to field 3 catchers. Whereas if you're playing a specific map in Overwatch, you might need 3 tanks.
Yeah.
You know?
And there's like, all right, you're playing the Arizona Diamondbacks and the Colorado Rockies on 2 different weeks. Well,
let's bring
you
out
only
8
have
shortstops.
Yeah. Well, you only have to prep for the Arizona Diamondbacks 1 week. And strategies are similar because it's baseball. It doesn't... Minute things may change depending on what diamond you're playing on, who's playing, whether there's an injury on a team. Like, smaller things will change, but it's not like you go from, all right, running bases scores you points to the number of balls you catch scores you points to... There's so much shakeup in Overwatch between maps, between matches, between teams, that you're right, it's a ton to prepare for.
It is, and that was something that Wins, who is a pro player who used to be on a team called Rogue, which is where we get AKM and Unko and Soon, said that he thinks that having so many maps makes it extremely difficult to prepare as a professional player.
Oh, yeah. Because it's not just, okay, this is a payload map, it's, oh, this is Junkertown. Ugh.
This is Junkertown, and Junkertown requires you to do entirely different things than you would do on, say, Route 66 or Dorado. Like, the same stuff isn't necessarily going to fly.
Maps that aren't Junkertown. I personally have a real problem with Junkertown, but that's me. I find that one more difficult to play than pretty much every other map with the possible exception of Rialto, and that's just because I don't know Rialto all that well yet. But yeah,
I like Rialto quite a
Junkertown.
bit. So that kind of covers all of the roster moves. Do we want to talk about expansion teams?
I think we do. I think we don't need to cover them in as quite as much depth as roster moves. Like this is an
Well, yeah, because
extremely
they're
oh my
so
god.
because yeah because the expansion teams are just all question marks
Yeah.
right now.
And this entire episode of this podcast is just extremely heavy inside baseball, like, because we're talking about all of
Yeah.
these roster changes that have happened, and most of them have happened within the past week, 10 days. A lot to talk about.
Oh
So
yeah.
future episodes will
It'll
probably be a little more gameplay focused, a little lighter. We're
yeah.
definitely going to have probably another one or two to talk about signings, especially depending on how those are spread out, whether they're front heavy, back
Signings,
heavy,
the
or
World
just
Cup.
spread out within the whole period. But yeah, a lot of inside baseball talk here, guys. Oof.
So yeah, we have 8 new teams coming
All
in.
confirmed as of this
8.
morning.
We were only supposed to have 6, but we're getting 8.
Which I think lends some credence to the shaking up the format, playing fewer matches theory. Because otherwise, how long do you want this season to run, and how are you going to fit 8 more teams into your rotation?
Yeah, it's a big thing.
A lot of plates to spin.
So,
A lot of plates to spin.
oh yeah. And so our 8 new teams: Atlanta, Georgia; Washington, D.C.; Paris, France; Toronto and Vancouver from Canada, representing the north side; and then from China, Guangzhou, Hangzhou, and Chengdu. And I'm sure that I butchered those pronunciations.
You did better
I'm
than I would
100%
have.
that I did.
You did better than I would have.
And all of these teams have been confirmed.
As of this morning on the official Overwatch League Twitter. So yeah,
And
this will be really, really interesting.
yes, it will. And I think my initial reactions are, one, I was hoping for more European teams.
Yeah.
Because we've got predominantly American and now predominantly Eastern Asian as well. Like, we've got Seoul, and then we've got 4 Chinese teams.
Yeah.
And that brings me to sort of my second point, which is, man, having 4 Chinese teams, I admit that I'm not the most knowledgeable on the Chinese Overwatch scene, but I'm worried about the depth of the Chinese scene, and can they fill 4 teams with Overwatch League level talent without importing a lot of players and coaches from other regions?
I would not be surprised if they did what most of the American teams did and do a lot of that importing.
Yeah, I think there is probably going to be some importing. I don't know how much we'll see. It's a big question mark to me. I imagine that some former Shanghai players might get picked up.
I'm sure
I
they
could
will.
see, yeah, and I imagine some of the former Miraculous youngster players that haven't retired or moved to a coaching role, because I think Creed did, but might get picked up by one of the new teams. The only other like really impressive Chinese player who I know off the top of my head is Eileen, who's known for Genji stuff, and I imagine Shanghai might try and snap him up if he's not gone by the end of the signing period.
So again, it's a whole lot of we'll see, and I'll be interested to see. Like, hey guys, hit up our Twitter or hit up the comment section if you're a little more knowledgeable about the Chinese Overwatch scene, and tell us your theories.
Yeah, please do. Please do, because Chinese Contenders is one of the ones I haven't really been able to watch just because of time.
So we're just throwing stuff at the wall, and we'll wait and see what
Yeah.
sticks.
On the opposite end of the spectrum from China, I have an idea of what I'd really like to see happen with Paris.
Yeah.
Because, obviously teams don't have to entirely be drawn from where they're representing. Like,
I mean, very obviously.
London's entirely Korean players. And honestly, I think that's okay because look at traditional sports teams, and most of the players are not born in those regions but come to represent them and live in them
Oh,
through
yeah. People
playing.
are signed and travel around all the time in professional sports, and there's no reason for that not to be the
Yeah,
case in professional Overwatch.
exactly. Though I understand from like British esports is like one of those things that they've tried, they don't quite have many top tier things to their name. So I can understand them being like, can we just have British people so we have a chance here, please?
Well,
I get it.
I'm also wondering
But
about the cultural differences and how esports and video games are treated by the culture at large between the EU and China and Korea and America. Like everyone's got a different way that they look at things and a different way that they
yeah,
treat this culture.
definitely. Because like I don't think it's a stretch to say that Korean teams and players get a very, I'll put it, a New York Yankees esque reception from a lot of people in esports because the Yankees are generally considered by baseball fans, and I say this as a Yankees fan, as people who they're just not well liked. Yankees because people have this perception that they buy their wins because they have like the biggest budget in the major league and just throw tons of money at players. And so they get this perception of being the evil empire because they just have significantly more resources and talent than other teams might have access to. Meanwhile, Korean players have dominated so many different esports titles for so long that a lot of people, they see a Korean team coming to play, in the back of their head, they just hear dun 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 dun. Just
And again, I'd chalk that up to cultural differences. I would say that
yeah,
being able to make a living in video games as a player, as a streamer, as a pro gamer has been a readily accepted concept in Korea a lot longer than it's been readily accepted in the United States. I'd say that the
yeah. I
American
think
esports culture, it wasn't really as well known until the advent of Twitch.
yeah, pretty much. And it was one of those things. Like I remember hearing about it from like a friend at like we're just chilling at his house playing video games, and they're like, people like play video games in stadiums in Korea and you get paid and they get paid to play games and people like go and watch it like it's a football game or something, and I'm just like, what? That is crazy. No way.
Smash cut to the year of our Lord 2018, and I'm looking forward to the season two
Smash,
things
yeah,
going, hey, so how much is a season ticket to the Overwatch League?
pretty
Because I
much.
would like to avoid
And
standing in line and I'd love front row seats. Like, yeah,
oh, I need that season pass.
this,
I need it because I'm living here now.
yeah, and watching Overwatch League, well, actually watching last year's World Cup for the first time and seeing esports and listening to the shoutcasters and going, oh my God, I finally understand why people who love football watch pro and college football. Because it's
Yeah.
this thing you love, played by people who are really good at it, commented on by people who know what they're talking about. And it was just this
Yeah.
moment of I've watched so many pro sports matches, and it's like, yeah, I can follow football. I know what a down is, and I know how many yards are in the field, and how many points a safety is, and I can follow baseball, and I can follow basketball, and I've been to plenty of pro matches for all of those. But watching Overwatch League and the World Cup was like, oh, I get it. Oh, and that's something that Korea figured out decades ago.
Yeah. And so getting we tangent aside, the
It's
thing
a
that I wanted to
relevant
say
tangent.
is it is a very relevant tangent. It is a hugely relevant tangent. But I'm just finishing the point that I was making initially here, which is you don't need to have teams be entirely drawn from the area that they represent, as long as they try to represent it, in the end. But The it's always nice to see a team really show up and represent their region in more than just their name. And I think Paris has a really good chance to have an entirely French team, because Eagle Gaming in Contenders EU, entirely French roster. They're going to the finals of Contenders EU. They've been able to hang with, the best in the scene. They play really impressively with very tank-heavy compositions. And they have a lot of veteran players, including Nico and Nox from Rogue, who, again, teammates of Unko, Soon, and AKM, and they're kind of a big part of... They were pretty much one of the biggest teams in Overwatch, and they all got their name made together through the success of that team.
So you'd like to see Paris pick them up and sprint.
Yeah, pretty much. That's my suggestion would be, sorry, I was momentarily distracted by the World Cup game.
Yeah,
because
Hydration's playing Symmetra.
Well, not just that, but he went through... Brazil pretty much... Austria had pretty much lost the game. It was only the Ana left up on the top. And Hydration went up to go get the kill, went through the teleporter, immediately got slept, and instead of going to, contest the point, the Ana just teabagged him until time ran out, because it was, half a second left. And everyone's just laughing about it.
I'm just happy to see Symmetra play outside of Mystery Heroes, and let's go have fun in the All-Star match.
Mm-hmm.
Symmetra play. More than Sureforce 14 seconds. Holy cow.
Woo! But, yeah, Paris, go ahead and pick up Eagle Gaming. Apparently, some of Runaway's players were doing some games in NA ladder the other night, which makes me very happy. I don't know if it necessarily means anything, because sometimes Korean players will play in NA ladder, specifically West Coast, because there's less boosting and trolling. But hey, maybe they're talking to some Overwatch League teams. I'd be happy with that.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. Again, it's just... all of this is speculation. It's so many big question marks because, again, the fact that these teams existed was only just officially confirmed. Not even 10 hours ago? 10 hours ago at the time of this recording.
Mm-hmm. The rumors have been pretty consistent for a couple weeks, though, so...
All right. Well, I say we should touch on the World Cup real quick and then end this because we're going on 2 hours pretty soon. That's a very long podcast.
It is. It's a very long podcast, and we'll talk about contenders stuff and possible pickups as they come up for these expansion teams. But yeah, World Cup. Did you get to watch any of the stuff for the Incheon qualifier or no?
I have not. Life has been a little crazy for me recently.
This is true, which is why I when we talked about it initially, you hadn't gotten to, so I'm just checking.
Yeah.
So for those of you who haven't been following, the Incheon qualifier in Korea was the first qualifier for the 2018 World Cup. And that wrapped up recently. I don't think it's a surprise to say that Korea came through with the #1 seed.
Sky blue.
I don't think that's particularly shocking. And basically it was a battle for second place between Russia and Finland, and I think that's where the big story kind of was. Because Finland is pretty much a team comprised entirely of Overwatch League players. Their starting lineup is Fraggy, Zappis, Taimu, Linkzer, Shaz, and Big Goose. And it's pretty much entirely the old Team Giganti lineup from Contenders Season 1 in 2017. And it was very cool to see all these guys who have been friends and played together for a very long time But man, did Finland show up. They showed up hard and actually took Korea to their limit. It was 3-2.
Wow.
It was so close.
And that's extremely close for a team that's been dominating everyone else.
Yeah, because it was nowhere near that close with any other team in the World Cup at that point. So Finland and Korea are the ones going through to the final, to the playoffs at BlizzCon, I should say. And Finland looked very strong doing it. So we may have, a challenger. The Kings in the North are rising in both the form of Finland and also Team Canada, who have been looking very strong in the World Cup games they've been playing starting today. They haven't played teams that are expected to perform very well just yet, but we'll see how they do coming up, because they'll be playing Team USA on day 3 of the LA qualifiers.
That match is
this coming Sunday.
I actually think that match is tomorrow.
Is it tomorrow? I thought it was day 3.
Yeah. No, I believe it's day 2. And I know this because there is a Valiant sponsored watch party for it, and that was initially set for Sunday, and then they're like, nope, sorry, we had the date wrong. It's Saturday. And the big thing for it is the US-Canada match, because US has space playing for them, and Canada has agilities.
Well, also, don't forget, USA's got a whole bunch of players, because they've got Moth as well.
Oh yeah, that's just the Valiant specific.
Well, yeah,
that's why they're focusing.
They've got
on that
Moth
match.
and Sinatra from Shock, and also Hydration from Gladiators.
Yeah, they've got all sorts of great people on there. And I mean, don't forget Raucus.
How could I forget Raucus?
He's a hard one to forget. He's fun. But yeah, so it will be interesting to see Canada and USA up against each other, because Canada has had a very strong performance and is a lot of Overwatch League and one notable former Overwatch League player.
Yeah, they have a really stacked lineup and a really good coach in Jane, who is now a coach for the Dallas Fuel as well.
That Team USA is also doing incredibly well and has an Overwatch League lineup.
With head coach Arrow of the Dallas Fuel.
So it's just going to be really interesting tomorrow. I think it's going to be a very tight match.
I think so too. I think it's going to be a hotly contested game.
I will be rooting for Team USA. For reasons.
I mean, as the Yanks, we kind of have to. Although I'm not sure that I would be able to root against Finland if we get a Team USA, Team Finland match.
Yeah, that's a whole lot of we'll see. It's mostly, like I said, I've made my opinions known earlier in this podcast, and there are certain people that I can support and certain people that I can't. So Team USA. And such is life. Yeah. So I think that is just about all we have for today. I say again, this is going to be we're hitting an hour 30 at this point in the recording. So
I think that's a good length. I think that's a good place to cut it.
Yeah, I think we can call that good.
Leave us some things to talk about next week.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how the signings go.
Or whenever we record this, whatever schedule. Yeah.
We'll see how signings go, and if all else fails, we'll definitely have the results of the US-Canada match to talk about.
Yeah, for sure.
So, in the meantime, CJ, where can people find your social medias?
At _rage_nerd on Twitter.
And I'm Katie. You can follow me all over the social medias and on YouTube, where you're finding this video right now, at Kiaxet, that is Kiaxet. Be sure to follow the podcast Twitter at OnThePointPod. And yeah, we will have an audio feed at some point in our lives. We still have a few kinks that we need to work out there, but keep an eye out for that, and we will announce that when it is available. And supporting our sponsor supports us, so head over to fredsbs.com, fredsbs.com, coupon code OnThePoint for 20% off of your entire order. Thank you guys for listening. We are enjoying the hell out of this, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, see you then, guys.